All right, guys, welcome back to another podcast. This is episode number 21 of a conscious conversation. As always, I'm joined by the graceful Craig Seaton. How are you doing?
I'm good. Graceful's debatable, but I'm good.
No, I think you are graceful. Very graceful.
Thank you, man. I'm a little sore, actually, mate. I'm good, but sore. Did my first training session back in the gym yesterday. First time I've touched weights since lockdown, and I can feel it. I feel like a wardrobe. Nothing, when you just like woke up today like that. But I'm good. I'm glad to be back in training.
So which gym is this?
Gym and Juice. Just went down to the private gym and got stuck in, and yeah,
nice.
Time to get the weights on. How are you doing, man?
I'm really good. I'm really good. So funnily enough, you're getting sore through training with weights. I did a stretch, I think yesterday or the day before. And actually, it was a couple of days ago because I've been sore for the last 4 days. So when you stretch your hamstrings off, anyone that knows about hamstring or anything about flexibility, when you stretch certain muscles, especially the hamstrings, you're normally left sore for at least about 3 or 4 days. And sometimes that extends into a whole week if you haven't targeted that muscle in a while. So my lower hamstrings, I realized last week that my lower hamstrings were quite tight. So I stretched them off on, I think it was Sunday or Monday, and I'm still sore to this day. It's just quite annoying because it's been such a long period of time of not stretching particular muscles. When you return to it, it's just the sort of the DOMs that you receive after a long period of time of not working on those muscles. So yeah, I'm feeling the same thing, but mine's the opposite extreme. It's not training or strength training, it's stretching the muscles out. But yeah, so you went down to London. How was your trip down in London?
Great, yeah, really good. The roads were easy to get down there. The weather was beautiful. Had about 10 hours sleep in 3 days. But it was great. Just being in London, it was a ghost town. There was nobody around. I mean, where we stayed, we were in like the business area district anyway. But chains weren't open, no Starbucks, no Pizza Huts, no, just the things that you notice anyway. Everything closed. There's a few, we had to kind of walk around. I mean, there's always pockets of things that were open, but if you're looking for a specific cuisine or a drink or something, you had to, really go and find it. But
so
yeah,
what was the reason you were there for?
Kundalini yoga, so I'm a teacher training there once a month on the weekend. But I just love London, man. I love the parks, the greenery that they have there. I always kind of thought I'd never like to live there, but for the last few years I'm going down, so they've just got so much more greenery going on. And that's what Manchester misses, isn't it? The trees, the grass. But yeah, it was a good trip down.
Nice. So which area was this in London?
We stayed in Covent Gardens.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's on the outskirts of London, isn't it?
My London geography is terrible. I know it's in London, basically. And there's an underground that will get me there.
Right. Yeah, I when I was doing my work placement back in university, I was in London for a year. And the place I was staying in was North London, a place called Harrow, and more specifically Stanmore and Kenton. A nice area outside of the city. And yeah, it was beautiful there, but I just never got used to the water. I just don't like the taste of their water. And for anyone that's living in London, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. It takes you like 3 or 4 times when you shower just to feel as though you're clean.
Oh, really?
Because I think their water comes directly from the Thames and it's just recycled, continuously recycled. So that can't be good for you. But I think down south is nice, but I don't think I would live in the city centre. I would definitely live on the outskirts. And I think Kent is quite nice, and places like that, Surrey, Kent, places like that. So yeah. But yeah, so we're going to talk about meditation in this video. So where do you want to start with meditation?
What is meditation? Shall I go with my interpretation?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the way I've seen meditation, I got into meditation when I was 24, 25, I'm 32 now. And it's been a part of my life ever since, really. There's not a month gone by that there's never not been a meditation involved. Most times it's been way more committed, and it'll be there every day. And even taking a break, I would miss it. As a lot of things start out, you go because you're interested in it, and then you build the habit and the ritual. And if you maintain it for a certain period of time, you kind of see whether it's worth having in your life or not. And every time I've stepped away from meditations, something's missing, or my energy won't be at a certain point, simply because I wouldn't be taking care of the mind. I think meditation is something that should be a fundamental part of our life, such as working out and eating clean food should. You know, there's obviously allowances in between that, but that wants to be in there just as important as waking up and showering and cleaning your teeth and having your breakfast and meditating wants to be there. Just because of the clarity it brings to your mind. It doesn't have to be the spiritual or the esoteric reasons that perhaps that we would go into it for, as well as daily maintenance. It's just to clear the mind, to bring that level of thought down, the energy that we're spending in the mind thinking, because remembering that thoughts are costing calories in the sense they're a form of energy. And not only do they cost energy, but they're putting us onto the pathway for the next energy. So if we're always negatively thinking or against ourselves or angry at the world, that thought and that energy stream is feeding more of it to go to the next point. The body and the mind we have today is the body and mind we're creating tomorrow. So to meditate, to create that stillness, wonderful. My interpretation of what meditation is, from my studies and my experiences, just stillness of mind. You know, you have some really good conversations with people getting into meditation or who've studied it from another angle, is that it's not about necessarily stopping your thoughts. It's seeing the thoughts, and by virtue of seeing them, they stop themselves. You get the gaps in between the words or in between the thoughts over time. And it's understanding what that is, not just logically, but when you get to experience that space, it's like you just click into life. You know, you click in with using the term one with everything. You know, it's a cliche term, but it has real meaning. And that to feel one with everything is when you're not out of sync with things, and it's when your thoughts aren't telling you this or that, or your body's not so much in terrible pain or discomfort, which can distract us. That's choice of distraction, but is just everything's there, you're in the right place. And meditation, that stillness is that. And I think it's more experiential than knowing about it. It gives the key to that understanding, but you will only generally access that if you stick with it for a certain length of time. I was very, very fortunate in my first experience with meditation to go, what the hell was that? I've spoke about that before, and that was the very, very start of my spiritual path at the Buddhist Center, meditation. That was it, because I experienced something never in my life prior, or interest towards it had ever come about. You know, drinking, drugs, partying, women, all that stuff that everybody does. To experience meditation, a stillness that came was like, there's your answers, there's your life, go follow that. And I've never left it since, really. Because it's that stillness that is the unifying awareness of what we fully are, beyond the personality, the likes and the dislikes, beyond the thoughts. We see we're not the thoughts really, as far as I'm aware now, are a reflective stance of where we are in life, what energy we're on, and what the subconscious views are. You know, they come through the thoughts. So we're never to hate our thoughts, or if we're depressed or suicidal, or we think we're God, or we think we're the best, or in between, whatever. The thoughts are just a representation of something that's going on inside. And I think when we recognize that and we say, no, I'm choosing to meditate now, whatever those thoughts are, let them be there without the attachment to it. And, I don't want to use not cliche words because they describe it, but like attachment, you know, things like that. Is when we see the word or the thought, it's to not go, oh yeah, I'm going to follow that thought and go with it. The point of the meditation is to continually come back. Is, oh yeah, I've got to do that later on, or what about, do you remember when I did that? And all these things come through when we quieten ourselves down, because the subconscious finally gets to go, oh, you're listening now, are you? Right, here's this, here's that, like the dreams do, you know, here's the letter to you. But to allow that, which probably comes with first getting into meditation, maybe play with that for a while, is let those thoughts come and go, okay, yeah, look at them. But ultimately, softening over time and going, there are more thoughts that come through, but meditation time, not to pursue those, just to watch them. Let the stillness come by watching. The space will grow. And through that, the energy settle. Not only are they settling, but the body's realigning. We're creating the same body and the same mind now for the future. So if we choose to settle and find stillness more and alignment of energy and flow, let's continue to do that and see what style of life comes from that. And that's where we have the yogis or the masters who've spent so much time doing the meditation and the practice, because that state of living is so far from us, is we don't really have that example in our everyday life, or it's mystical, or it's so far out from our lifestyles. But when we get to go into it, and that's the style that we can live in, you know, as long as it's authentic and we're not just, yes, I'm meditating and this is how you do it. You know, if we've really seen, oh cool, that's how you meditate, and that's the energy that we can have as our perfume, like Sadhguru, Krishnamurti, all the people we talk about regularly, it's come from the stillness of meditation, not so much the knowledge and the learning of security of, well, I'm this kind of person and I avoid that. And it's just sit in stillness, feel that, and you'll find something great and wonderful in it. Just like how we like to drink a coffee and get, right, I'm energized, or we like to train and feel good, or whatever feeling it, we go, I want that feeling. Find that feeling through meditation. Find what the feeling of meditation is, like commit to it and go for it. And that's where a massive catalyst for change will come, because that's what we are. That's not even a substance of coffee or of working out. It's just sitting still. It's just quietening down. What if we become that? What will we find?
Yeah, definitely. So you mentioned a few things there, and I kind of want to focus on one thing and then maybe go on to the next thing. So in terms of meditation, there is this sort of negative connotation when it comes to meditation, because it's normally attached to religious practices or spiritual practices. But also there's the other side, which I think is a bit more darker. And I don't think we normally see it as this, because we tend to relate to science and the studies, but you've got the side of meditation these days where companies are now trying to sell meditation. You know, how can you sell something where you just sit down and you just observe your thoughts? How has that become something that you can sell? But companies have done it. So you've got, and this is not in any way to try and put down these companies like Headspace and
Calm.
Yeah, and these companies that obviously have an app that helps you meditate or get into a meditative state. But then at the same time, it creates this idea of what meditation should feel like or what it is. And I think that's what takes away the essence from meditation. So when I first got into meditation, was about 2-3 years ago, I was chasing that. I was chasing the benefits. I read about the benefits of meditation through the studies that were done and what kind of equanimity it brings to the body and the mind. And as soon as you put the idea out there of this is how it's supposed to be, then all you're doing is you're chasing that feeling as opposed to just letting the experience, do its own thing. And I think from that, it creates a sense of attachment, which is the opposite of what we're trying to achieve. So like you mentioned about the attachment aspect, we're trying to achieve this non-attachment, if you want to call it that, but doing it in a way where you're not having to always define it as it being that. So for example, if you're sat there and you catch yourself out meditating, you realize, oh, actually, there is some form of stillness going on. By seeing it that way and catching yourself out, you've done exactly the opposite of what the effect that you wanted. So it's just allowing the experience to take you on a journey, or maybe it's not even a journey, maybe it's just complete silence and there's nothing going on apart from just being present. And I think that's what meditation is in its fundamental form. It's the fact that you are present, which is something that we really struggle with these days. What does Sadhguru say? And we mentioned in the previous podcast, we're either always looking at the regrets of the past or thinking about the ideas that and things that we should have done or we could have done, or we're looking at the future thinking what you want to do. You're always striving for the future, or you're always lost in the past looking at the regrets. So it's just bringing a sense of being present in this moment in time. And from my experience of going through this process and trying to understand what meditation is for me, I've realized that the stereotypical way of just sitting there and observing the thoughts, and to be fair, I found more benefit from counting the breaths. So, taking a breath in and counting how long it takes me to take a deep breath in and exhaling, or you can do the opposite, which is count the number of breaths, inhales and exhales that you take. And what usually happens is if you get lost and you forget your count, you start again. And it's a good way of figuring out if you're getting too lost in a thought or getting too attached to a thought, or whether you're allowing the thoughts to just pass and you're letting go of those thoughts. And it is something in the West which isn't taught on a regular basis in the schooling system and then at work and stuff. Whereas in the East, traditionally, it was a huge part. Stillness and meditation was a huge part of the sort of lifestyle of a student, and then you would apply that to your work lifestyle as well. So yeah, it's very interesting how meditation now, it has all these different sort of connotations attached to it. And for us, it's more about the spiritual aspect, but at the same time, it's just about, calming the mind down. But I think Alan Watts talks about if you try and calm the mind and you try and force yourself to calm the mind, all you're going to do is start thinking about calming the mind, and all you're doing there is just thinking over and over again. So how would you prescribe prescribe is a funny word. But how would you prescribe meditation to someone who's a newcomer, and how would you define it to them based on your interpretation?
And what you said, counting the breath, is a very good way in. I think giving the mind something to do is necessary at the start of meditation. You could just go, okay, stop thinking. Well, how do I stop thinking? I've been doing it for however many years of my life because of what we've been taught and what the conditioning is. Through that is the gateway to deep self-discovery. We can talk about that later, but to go into the meditational aspect is, I like to start beginners, is the way I learned, and it was so effective. Work with your body first, because depending on the level of subtlety and how aware people are, whether they're only aware of their hands because they can feel it, or they can feel subtle movements of energy within the body, or they can feel the air around them, or whatever level of sensitivity we're at. Meditation will deepen those aspects if we continue to train it that way. So the easiest way to start is use the beginning, which is your physical body. So right now we're sat here. When I tune in, I can feel my ass sat on this cushion. I can feel my feet on the floor. I can feel my left shin on top of my right heel. I can feel this jacket across my arm there, and I can feel the tension in my hunched shoulders. It's like, okay, right, back in posture, relax. It's what an aspect of meditation. Check yourself, keep coming in. So you work with the body first, just to start relaxing, a body scan. So start from the ground up. I can feel my feet, relax them. Relax the toes, relax the ankles. Follow that energy up the shins and the backs of the legs, knees, upper legs, hips. Carry on up through the body, feeling the breath in different areas. And that was using the growth states, the lowest state, the densest state, the easiest state to work with. We've got physicality and spiritual and energetical ways to tap into things. The physical is the 3D realm. It's the easiest, it's tangible. So yeah, you scan the body, knowing that the body, all those cells, what is it, like 30 billion cells in the body, something like that. They're all listening to what the mind says. So the importance of thoughts comes back in. Am I telling my body to tighten, or I can't do this? Whatever thought is being transmitted, the body's responding on some kind of level. Even if we think it's unrelated, like I can't do that, well, your body's responding to that sensation of I can't do that. So there'll be resistance because I can't is a block somewhere, and I can't, so defend or stay safe, whatever it is. So we just tell the body to relax everything, relax the body, scan it, soften. Once I've done that, I like to then go into the breath. So the mind has now a subtler point of focus. First it's the body, and it gets to move around. The mind gets to go, there's the feet, there's the legs, there's the hips, there's a pain, I don't like that, that feels nice. The mind gets to play with different things, like a kid playing with toys. Then we go, right, now you're going to get simpler toys. So we take a few toys away. You've got the breath. Follow the breath in. 1, 2, and we count that to 10, not verbally, but within the mind's eye. So you follow the breath, see the number 1, exhale, follow the breath, see the number 2, exhale. Maybe prolonging the breath a little bit. Trying to get to 10 is great because we'll see how our capacity and strength of the mind is. Do we make it to 10? Generally, we'll get to 2 or 3 and we'll be gone already. It's, oh God, I've already gone. So we pull it back, we keep catching it, we pull it back, we come back to 1. Then I like to go from 10 down to 1. I'm doing this with many different people in classes. Some people actually find it easier to count back from 1. It can be placebo, but their mind might just work better that way. So you're finding these elements of numbers and breath that works. So the number has gone simpler. Once we've got kind of efficient with that, or we're ready to just practice the next stage, we take away another toy. So all you've got left is the breath. We're no longer feeling the physical body. We're no longer counting, which is something for the mind to do. We're just feeling and observing. So the breath comes in. I feel it in my belly. I feel the breath moving through. I'm not actively doing anything. I'm not even controlling the breath. You could start with longer breaths because there's still that level of activity that's going, it's okay, come on, I'll hold your hand and take you there until we're willing to let go. Because there's also the sensation of nothing, which can be quite scary really for people at first. So we just follow the breath, subtly the breath, which is what the Buddha taught in Buddhism, because as he was teaching, as he was traveling around and sharing out his enlightenment and what he learned, the breath was for the layman, so the layman knows always to follow that. Wherever you go, you've got the breath, and it's a subtle point, and it will connect you to something deeper. Besides the massive importance of how breath alters your state anyway, and if you were to just sit and meditate on the breath, it will take you somewhere if you can maintain that. But then once we've worked with the breath, eventually there's no toys left. And you're just left with what? You're just left in stillness, in nothingness. The thoughts and the body and things might pop back in, but that's when we catch it. I was swimming in that pool and I realised I'm not in that pool anymore. I want to go back to it. Right, I will practice more sincerely. Now we kind of know where we're going towards. It becomes easier, but it can never be competitive. It can never have any of, I've got to get there, or I should be there, because it defeats the whole point of meditation, which is incredible. What a wonderful package to unfold. It will teach you so much about life. Is meditation on its own is just see everything that comes with that, because ultimately meditation is what you are. That stillness behind your thoughts, your body, what you want, what you hate, what you think about the world, what your reality is. All of it goes in meditation.
Yeah, so again, two things I want to point out. Number one is sensations and feeling, and number two is the toys of meditation. So if I forget the second part, just remind me to go back into it. So for the feeling and sensations, when you was talking about that, I just remembered 2 days ago, I think it was, or it might have been yesterday, I got to a stage in my meditation where for the first time I would say I was conscious that I couldn't feel my body. So the typical position that you sat in meditation, I can usually feel the clothes that I'm wearing. So that's a good question to ask yourself whenever you're doing anything. When you're talking about being conscious, being aware, being present, are you feeling your own clothes? Can you feel your socks on? Can you feel your pants on? Stuff like that. And it's a good way of catching yourself out to make sure that you are aware of what's going on. And I remember I got to a stage where it felt really weird to not be able to feel my hands. And I knew if I just moved it, I was moving my hands very subtly, just so that I was aware that I still had my hands, so my mind didn't panic. But it was so interesting to not be able to feel your limbs and your own body. It's just a really interesting feeling. And I thought maybe that was because I had fallen asleep, because that's the other process that a lot of beginners find. And I'm definitely guilty of this. When you're meditating, I've noticed if I meditate when I'm tired, there's a very fine line between being tired and being in that position where your mind is still tiring, but it's still awake. But when I feel tired, I know that I end up nodding off whilst I meditate. So I can feel myself, catch myself out.
The nodding dog.
Yeah, you've probably seen that in a lot of your classes when you watch people doing this. You'll see people nodding off, and then when you ask them, how was your meditation? They'll be like, oh, it was amazing. I felt like I was in this amazing world. It's probably because you fell asleep. But yeah, people generally tend to nod off, and you'll see them just catching themselves out. So this was something beyond that. So I was present, but I just couldn't feel my body. I couldn't feel the sensations of my body, and I couldn't really feel my mind. So I couldn't feel the chatting monkey or the thoughts. So that's an interesting feeling, and just to kind of ride with that feeling, that was an interesting process as well. So to not to be able to feel your body, which ties in with the second thing, which is the toys. So it's so easy, and we mentioned this, I think, on the second podcast, using the analogy of the cave where you're shining the light. It's so easy to shine your light in one direction and almost be scared of shining your light first of all, and say, I'm too scared of what's in the dark. But then as soon as you shine a light and you find maybe diamonds or something, you end up latching onto that. So it's so easy to latch onto stuff when you're meditating. So going by what Patanjali says in his Yoga Sutras, he goes, you start off focusing on certain things, and like you said, the breath and the awareness of the body, what you're sat on, how you're sat, and how the body feels, the type of clothes that you're wearing. It's so easy to start off with that, but then don't get too lost with that. So what usually happens is a lot of people tend to start off, for example, he says, if you focus on your senses, which is the next stage from the physicality of feeling your body, is if you focus on the sense of smell, taste, or sight, you'll start seeing things. So you might see things if you focus on your sight. If you start focusing on the smell, you'll start smelling really amazing things. And the taste, the same thing as well. So if you think about right now what a strawberry tastes like, you know exactly what a strawberry tastes like. So if you latch onto that, again, that's a form of meditation. But then again, you have to be very mindful that you don't get caught with that, because then you start looking for that sensation every time you go into the meditative practice. So it's so easy as a beginner to kind of get lost into all that. So it's a very simple way of just bringing yourself down, grounding yourself. Yeah, experience that feeling, that sensation as a gateway to get into that environment or that feeling. But then as soon as you're in that environment or feeling, let go of it straight away. So then we're not latching onto that sensation, and we're not striving for that same sensation each time we're going into the practice. So yeah, playing with different toys, but understanding that, like you said, they are toys and you are supposed to just let them go and maybe grab another toy, something that's a bit more advanced. So yeah, those are the two things we want to talk about. I don't know what your experience is with those aspects. So the aspect of feeling what's happening and the aspect of having new toys to play with when you meditate.
I like the idea of the toys. I mean, we might be undermining the importance of such tools, as body scans, of being aware of your body and being able to maintain concentration on focusing on the numbers. They are very useful tools and necessary, I think, definitely at the start. And as we get into meditation, I don't know how long it takes, but I'm definitely not at a point where I could just sit down and go, oh, silence. It doesn't work that way. There's always a phasing way in. There's times when I definitely have the sensation where I want to meditate. Something's hungry for still. My meditation, I did my sadhana this morning and finished my practice, and I just had some space music on. It's very subtle, and it was like, this is noise, just want it off. Turn the music off, and it's like, there's just nothing around. And I really like, it's a positive sign to me when that occurs, that whatever it is, the mind, the soul, whatever, it wants silence, it wants stillness. And it's, becoming aware of what meditational practice you are doing, and what will help you get there. Like mantra, I love mantra for meditation, because it really, you're vocalizing, you're generating an energy, you're tapping into a certain stream or a lineage of energy, you get to be in that, and the mind has got something to focus on. It seems to just calm the mind as well. Is whatever mantra you're doing, Om Mani Padme Hum, Sat Nam, whatever mantra, just repetition gets the mind focused, generates the energy. And then when you stop, it's like, just feels so still and so wonderful. And even if it's, there's so many forms, like Sufi dancing, what they call the whirling dervishes when they're doing the dance, morning prayers with Buddhism, so many different ways. So there's so many tools that people can use to go, okay, I'll use that to get into my meditation. They will land in that stillness beforehand. I mean, what is yoga for? Obviously, it's health of the body, but ideally, you're bringing in that stillness of mind with your shavasana at the end, like meditation. Don't just go off into nowhere. Relaxation is vital, but meditate, because you've just pushed your body through these maneuvers to get to that point, to reach the stillness, because everything's now in line. With Kundalini yoga and yoga, other yogas anyway, you're working in certain patterns of movement to direct energy. It's what we're doing, right? Physical body's a benefit, but we're training levels of energy to take us to this certain level of samadhi and stillness of mind and meditation. So there are so many different ways to play with the sensation, feeling something mental, even something physical. Mala beads, using mala beads, I have a big love for them. They're really fun. I'll combine them with my mantra, and you can take them when you're walking around, like in your pocket. You just 108 times as you're pressing it, mantra in your head, and what a great focus point. It's like an anchor through life, rather than the random drivel we have walking around our daily basis, or crazy random songs in the head or music on, which there's always a time and place for.
Yeah.
But when you're entering the meditative lifestyle and something that you want to become part of your life, there are tools to integrate that almost at any point throughout the day. Standing, walking meditations, whatever it is, active meditations. But I think a strong grounded foundation is always with your stillness of meditation, whether in the morning or in the evening is a great times to practice, and being aware of the tools that work for you to get you there.
Yeah, so when you were talking about how on certain days you'll feel a certain state, like I mentioned before this podcast, Eastern philosophy talks about this in terms of the gunas, or the gunas are how we say it. And there's three types of gunas. We've got the sattvic, we've got the rajasic, and then we've got the tamasic. And I was saying it to you that today I'm aware of it, and it's quite interesting to be aware of what kind of state you're feeling. So the days where you feel like, I want no noise, I just want complete silence, that usually is a very tamasic trait. You're looking for emptiness, and you're looking for complete, getting rid of all the noise and complete silence. And I've gone through and I've cycled through the three. So yesterday and the day before that, I would definitely say that was more rajasic. So Eastern philosophy says, when you're in that mode of rajasic, usually we normally say that the tamasic one is the one you don't want to be in, but actually it's the middle path, which is the sort of the one that doesn't bring calmness to the mind. The other two extremes are fine. So the sattvic, where the mind is pure, it's the best time to meditate. And even when you're in a tamasic sort of mood, that's a great time to meditate, because you have emptiness, but you're your point of focus is different on each of those days. The Rajasic one is the interesting one, where depending on what you're experiencing and depending on what you're looking for through your daytime, in your awake state, you will tend to latch onto that in the Rajasic phase, because that is the mode of passion. So, for example, what I was experiencing yesterday was, I think I was thinking about getting a new car or this and that, and those kind of thoughts were just kind of controlling my mind. So it wasn't the best frame of mind to go into meditation, especially when you're trying to focus on a particular object like God or a mantra. It's very difficult to have that focus when your mind is already too drawn in with the material aspect. So this is where Eastern philosophy talks about, in that mode, be aware of what mode you're on right now, because depending on what you're going through, what you've encountered. So a person that you encounter, especially when you're in the early stages of mindfulness and spirituality, a person that you encounter can change your mood. So you could be easily spending 90% of your day in a sattvic environment and your mind's clear, and then you might, I don't know, you're driving and someone cuts you off and that annoys you, and that's created obviously a Rajasic or a Tamasic environment. So just be aware of what state you're in. So again, like the body scan, it's a good way to do a mind scan and try and figure out what your state is each day. And yeah, like I said, the Tamasic one is good to focus on the emptiness, the feeling of emptiness, the feeling of stillness. The Sattvic one is good to focus on a particular mantra or God, or a particular point of focus. And the Rajasic is the most interesting one, where you focus on the fact that you're not the mind or the body. So if you're feeling any sort of dissonance, or you feel like, my mind is not still today and I'm too attached to the world, on the Rajasic mode, this is where you want to push that away and say, I'm not the mind or the body. Mm. And then once you've instilled calmness again, then you're in a good environment to meditate. So yeah. Yeah,
I think with, so depending on what frame of mind we're at, which also takes a good level of self-awareness to have that realization that you've just said is, my mind's like this today. Because I think most people would choose to beat themselves up and go, my mind won't ever shut up and it's a problem. Yeah. Well, maybe you're just in line with the Rajasic state of mind today. Or, it really brings home that there are sources of energy outside of ourselves that influence our life, whether that's astrology or the environment. It can't be denied when you drop a bit of ignorance into think that, everything's just my choice and I do it like that. Yeah, but only to the level of consciousness that you have, and there's always a greater level of consciousness. So when we're making these decisions and choices, to apply that awareness of, where's my mind coming from and what am I being influenced by at this moment? It's really interesting. When you've got things like the moon and the lunar cycle, and the fact that the moon controls water in the oceans and the tide and the water within us, it's like, there's even astrology, people can say it's not true, or horoscopes or whatnot. Yeah, it's an ancient thing, and there's reasons why it's linked up to such great civilizations like the Egyptians or the Mayans, the Aztecs, or Greek culture. It's in there because I believe these cultures knew more naturally than we do. But you're affected by the sun, right? Does the sun not give you heat? Is the sun not the reason why we're alive? Or where the moon is, or where the orbit is? So all these other stars placed around, would they not have an effect as well? Whether they're further away or close away, and when you were born, and the elements that went into your creation when you were born, do they not have an effect too? For me, yeah, 100%. Not that I base, I can't do anything because it's Mercury in retrograde, and things like that, so I'm not going to do it. I'll be in line, not that my awareness is that great on that stuff, but I'll listen to people who know way more than I do and go, okay, yeah, that kind of makes sense. I won't go all in, like, right, I'm going to lock myself in my house because It's, know what's around you and work within that. Have I woke up at 5 a.m? Right, I might be a bit tired and crabby today. Become aware of that alone, just knowing that, not trying to battle through everything, is understanding where you're at. And working with those aspects of mind, using an animal mind being the lower side, the neutral mind being the middle ground, and then the angelic mind or the positive mind at the top, and seeing that the animal, the human, which is the neutral, and the angelic elements are what a human is. So when we fall into that animalistic mind, or the instinctual, which has its benefits at times, mind, that I'm in the animal zone, so let's soften that and try and get more to a healthier zone, or we're in the human area where it's about myself and the other, or the top one being it's all about the other. You know, which part are we in and what are we doing with our day, and also the state of mind as well. Like if I've got a really, really busy mind and want to meditate, I will go to mantra, because the energy I'll put into like the you know, giving it a lot of power and energy will help quiet the thoughts down, because they go, oh, getting like, you know, we've got something to do here, or it can be quiet, you know, if I'm more relaxed. You can even just change the elements that you have, and even the breathing style. Like if you want more energy, activate your what hemisphere do we need? So you want to block your left nostril. So you want to activate like your right hemisphere of the brain and generate more sun energy and bring that in there to, you know, to awaken that energy to change the mind over, because even which part of the brain that we're using is going to influence our state for the day. So if you were thinking very car-based, or I need to get this done or that done, we'll be in the left side of the brain, which is the logical aspect. Or maybe we're too much in the right side, where we're very creative and outgoing and expressive, and we need to slow it down. And using which part of the brain for the day, so you can just spend 4 minutes just breathing through one nostril or the other to stimulate that part of the brain hemisphere and get ourselves in line. And again, it's that level of control where we see we're not actually in total control of ourselves, unless we become aware of what state we're in and start to apply, I'm there, so I'm just going to ease it off and put it into this to get a much better result, and condition ourselves to always be aware, and we'll keep refining that state, keep coming back to meditation or the practices that fine-tune us all around.
Yeah, so it's interesting you say about the nostril thing. Have you ever noticed, and the science shows this, that at each point of the daytime, depending on what day it is, where you are, where I think it's the fluctuations of the planets, where the planets are, the fluctuations of the tides and stuff, one nostril will be blocked and the other one will be open, and it'll be subtly shifting throughout the daytime. So that is telling you which side of the brain you are predominantly using. So if you're using your left brain, I think your right nostril is open and your left one's blocked, and it's vice versa. I think it's that, I'm not 100% sure, but it's just, it works in like an X, it's the opposite one, isn't it? But yeah, that's an interesting state. And I always remember when I was young, when I'm paying attention to these kind of things, I've noticed that my right nostril will be quite blocked, and it's because I was very much right hemisphere dominant. So my left nostril was open and I was using my right brain. I think is that
yeah,
right?
It's the brain side corresponds. So right now I was just checking my breath. My left nostril's open, my right one's not as much. So that's coming from right brain. So the right brain goes to the left side, left brain goes to the right side.
Yeah, exactly the same right now. So when you're thinking, it's also how you articulate your thought. So if you're using your right side, it's more about how you feel and you're expressing how you feel, whereas on the other side, it's more trying to use your mind to articulate the thought. So,
which is this conversation, free flow. We're not really running off, we've got this to say and these rules and this fact. It's not analytical in a sense, possibly, but it's coming from how we like to do our podcast, which is let's talk, free flow, let it go. And that's the right side of the brain, the creative aspect, which is why it makes complete sense that the left nostril is the one that's breathing through now.
So I think in regards to that, and then going back to what you said about the 3 levels, the 3 states. So you've got the primal, the primitive state, then you've got the human, and then you've got the high consciousness or the angelic state. It's quite interesting how that works. And I've always felt it depends on which of those states you are feeding. So if you're feeding the animal state, which is basically doing things that animals do, which is procreate, defecate, and
eat,
ingest, exactly. So those 3 things, depending on which one you're doing, and then the human one, I would say, is more of the intellect, feeding the intellect, reading, studying, etc. And the higher states are being aware and going within. Depending on which one you're feeding will determine which one you tend to dominate, which one tends to dominate throughout the daytime. And I've always felt like if you get into a mode of just consuming something that's tasteful, you get really caught. I think that's one of the main ones you can relate to. So when you eat something and you really enjoy that food, it's quite easy to get drawn away from the other 2 states and get caught up in that primitive state. Whereas as soon as you feel as though, okay, I'm getting sick of this food now, you end up shifting from that state to another state. So again, it goes back into the 3 modes of the gunas again. So it's a different interpretation, but it's the same concept. And again, it's what you're feeding yourself. So good food will generally mean that you're in a better state. And then tying that with performing yoga, so you're creating the right environment, the right place in your body to then work on higher consciousness and higher states of your mind, that will also benefit in working on the other two states, which is the middle state and the high state as well. So yeah, that was quite interesting as well. So how do we tie that in with, so it's quite easy for you and I to just say, oh, these are the states, be aware of this and that. And I've always found it quite interesting to kind of portray that to people that are complete newbies in this. Because then this is where I mentioned at the start of the podcast, how certain companies have exploited meditation. They've taken away from the spiritual aspect, which is really important, but then they've completely distanced themselves from that spiritual aspect and they've brought it into purely the scientific aspect. And how do you kind of bring people into the spiritual aspect?
Good question, man. I was listening to Joe Rogan yesterday. He had James Nesbitt on, who's a breathwork coach, and he was talking about the science behind it and experimentations and all the different breathwork teachers too, like Wim Hof, he never says he created these breathworks because he knows he didn't. They've been around for over thousands of years, if not before we even had writing down, when you study them from the Buddhists or in Hindu or India, wherever, you'll see that they've been there for thousands of years. And, Joe Rogan said to him, because this guy hadn't studied a specific form of tummo, because the way that it's taught is actually a much deeper version that in this case, the Tibetan Buddhists do. Like they will breathe in and out to a certain percentage of their breath and maintain that. While here, Wim Hof will just be like, just breathe, just get the breath in, Or other teachers, myself included, will be like, yes, taking the breath. We're not going to be there measuring 20% or 30%, even though that's ideal. That's not the culture. And it's definitely not level of awareness. And the interesting part was, he was saying he asked to go and stay with them to do it, and they didn't want him to do it.
Who's that?
Yeah, the Tibetan Buddhists. Okay. They didn't want James Nesbitt's research and science going over there to do it. And he was saying, they just politely said no. And they were talking about, maybe they want to keep some secrets in their pocket, because what would we use it for and how do we do it? And that made me reflect, what do we use it for? Which ties really into that question you just said. Is it become so scientific that we're just sort of switching off the mind? Do we want to feel superior? Do we want to feel calm? Do we want to feel like we've mastered something? Are we following a trend? What are all these reasons for? What is the clarity of doing it? And what would we do with the result? Looking at the West, have we taken away the spiritual aspect for it? I don't think it has to be in there. I do believe if you're sincere about meditation, that will come regardless. I don't think you can step away from that, because when you embody the feeling that stillness and meditation brings into that nothingness or that connection to everything, whichever way you look at it, you cannot deny that there's something more going on than your thoughts and your physical attachments and your belief in the body and just, this is all I am. You can... It's funny actually, I suppose I've not had the conversation so long, but your name and your body and who you are it's pretty drilled into me now that I'm not those things, and makes disattachment from certain things a hell of a lot easier, because I'm temporary, I'm going to die, as we went into the last two podcasts. I can't just be my name and my body, because they are things outside of myself. The body's, even the body to a degree, it's my vehicle through the world, but my name and your achievements and whatnot, it's all achieved out. What are you if you're not doing those things? Meditation delivers us to that, and ties you into the search for the answer. So has the West separated science from spirituality?
Has it perverted it, I would say.
Perverted spirituality?
Yeah. Or the aspect of isolating.
Spirituality, sorry, what you say?
I was just going to say, they isolated one aspect and then they thought, how can we exploiting is probably the best way to describe it instead of perverting it.
I'd like to think it hasn't gone in with how do we purposely exploit. Like the apps like Calm, and I forgot his name. I love it. He's sort of on par with Jordan Peterson. What's his name? It'll come to me later. But he's a great meditator teacher. I think he does them with Calm. And he teaches through it, or even Russell Brand. It's not like they're inherently bad because they're being taught or they're popularized, because it's a great way in for many people. And I do believe that the spiritual awakening that's talked about so much, it is here, because from the experience I've had or been into since 7 years ago, 8 years ago, people are more people and more frequently are having these experiences, and they're popping up everywhere now. And it's, how is that occurring? How is that spreading around? Unless it's something to do with the times and the calendar and where consciousness is directing itself. Meditation massively helps that process go forward because you have a sense of letting it go and just being in flow with yourself. But yeah, to go back to science versus spirituality, I think there is a big separation, and it can stay that way if we don't choose to join them. Is go, oh no, I do meditation just because it calms my mind, my brainwaves do this, and bang, bang, bang. Great, you might just stop at calmness then. You might just stop at, I've done 5 minutes, 10 minutes, I feel relaxed. 5 minutes to 10 minutes will never be enough to get to those deeper states as something that you cultivate. You know, you might have that one experience like in Zen. They had the times where the master would just whack, and then they've hit sudden enlightenment after being told a koan or a riddle, and just, then they're there. You know, there's those stories that occur from sudden enlightenment. But they've also been practicing meditation for a long time to be able to access that space. So if we don't appreciate both sides, like in anything in life, the polarities of them, not the dualities, but the polarities, that it's one big stretch, science and spirituality, as the great scientists would tell you, like Tesla or Einstein, they will tell you that it's life's consciousness it's a bigger thing than what we're doing. You cannot separate them. And once science accepts spirituality fully and will study it through the lens of spirituality, we will have so many more breakthroughs and understandings. And as we've spoke about before, how what Hinduism knows or Buddhism knows or Taoism knows, they've got knowledge and information that we're only just scratching the surface of now. Quantum physics, they've been talking about that stuff for thousands of years. Yeah. You know? Yeah. So if we don't bridge it, we're missing out a part. And why are we just working on the scientific aspects? If somebody goes into meditation to calm down, if they've got depression, they've got anxiety, they're stressed out, or they just want to chill out and feel their body, great, it's being used well. But it will go much further if you go, I want to go, if I felt something and it's in it. Depends what level of life we're living at, because there's always more, isn't it? And for me, the spiritual path, in the sense of meditation and oneness and consciousness, is the only way to go, because everything else is derived from that. That's the truth, that's the origin of become the peace, become the stillness, and use your body and your likes and your loves and your interests as bringing something that you can individually share on the world. But you'll know what that is much clearer without distortion via meditation and via spirituality and living from the harmony, the understanding and the bigger mindscape that brings, that you won't get just through science alone. Science is also skewed because you've got a particular man or a woman with a particular mind looking for a particular goal to prove a particular point, not from, let's just see where this goes. You know, it takes probably a lot of strength in self to go, I don't want anything out of it, I just want to see what the truth is. Yeah.
So that's perfectly described there. I think that's the difference between modern science and where the yogic sciences come from, because that's what yoga is. It's a form of science. But the difference between the modern interpretation of science, which is the Western science, is we're not looking for anecdotes. We're not looking for people's personal experiences. We're looking for a group or a collective. And we're looking for certain criteria. And if we don't meet those criteria, we shoot the entire theory down, which is a terrible way of going into it. And I think this is what science has gone down. It's gone down that path of, right, let's troubleshoot these, asking these questions. But then if these questions don't get answered, or if they create other questions, again, we'll isolate the questions, but then we'll get to a point where we feel as though we're not getting anywhere else, so we'll cancel it and say it doesn't exist. It's not a really good way of doing it, whereas the yogic way of doing it, which has always been the way it's been taught, is anecdotal. What have you experienced? What have I experienced? Okay, so let's go measure that with other people's experiences. And then we don't look at what you've experienced, it's how you've got. Do we have the same experiences, or have we gone into it in the same form? So for example, if I describe to a person what meditation was, if meditation wasn't actually labeled as meditation, how would I describe it? Stillness, this and that. But then what I could do is go around and ask someone like you and say, have you experienced the sensation of stillness and this and that? And you'd be like, yeah, I've gone through something similar. I've looked at my thoughts and I've gone through my thoughts and I realized that actually now I'm not thinking about new things, I'm just observing them. And I was like, that's a form of stillness. And this is what the yoga sciences have done. They've gone through many countless individuals and asked them, what have you experienced? And then we've shared it together. Whereas the scientific approach is, let's try and find this concrete thing. So if I've got stillness, you have to have the same level of stillness for it to be considered meditation. And again, it's the wrong way to approach it. And I think the right way to approach it is to do it in the way which is, and I get it, like some anecdotes, you will say that, some people will tend to kind of over-exaggerate things or under-exaggerate things just to push their own agenda. And I think you have to be very truthful about, or you have to create a society which is truthful about what they experience. And if you live in a society where spirituality is the main goal, then generally speaking, and mindfulness is the main goal, then generally speaking, you'll have an environment where the anecdotes are taken seriously as opposed to being shut down based on certain types of agendas.
Yeah, I mean, I look at myself as reference, and as much as, the last 8 years I've been giving to spirituality and trying to ground it and make it, a real thing, there'll be still criticisms of these people that I do believe and trust. I'll be like, oh, is it really real though? Is it really real? Because it's not in my experience. And is that the one of the tales in the Bible of when Jesus had been crucified and he was buried for 3 days, and then I can't remember which one of the disciples it was, but they come back and said, I saw Jesus, he came to me, but they're like, no, he's dead, how is that possible? And he explained it, like, oh wow. And then there's one left, Thomas, he was like, no, I'm not having it, I won't believe it until I see Jesus myself and I touch him, I'm not accepting it. And that's where doubting Thomas comes from. It's from that whole aspect of Thomas wouldn't accept the reality of it, even though it was truthful, it wasn't in his experience. Is that a bad thing, or is that a clever thing? And this goes off the people that you trust and whatnot. Again, your experiences, Sadhguru's experiences, other of my spiritual friends and the things that they've experienced, far out stuff. I will believe now. I'll always put it through my frame of mind, but I will believe after the crazy stuff I've experienced, and the stuff that, wow, that was real for me. Whether it's real or not, the experience was. And you have to, make sure it's not illusion and decipher through, but it's looking at what did I do to access that point, and how did it, what was the experience with it? More so, what do I do with it? Was it just for then, or can I apply it to my life? But anyway, then in the story when Jesus came to Thomas on his own, and he was still seeing him, and Jesus was like, do you not believe your own eyes? He's like, no, I can't believe it, thinking it was an illusion. And then he got to touch Jesus' wounds from the crucifix and the cross, and he put his finger into them, and that was it. The experience was then, it settled, it sank in, wow, the master's here, the teacher's back, and it's true. So it's how do we verify those levels of experiences, which I think knowing, trusting character really is helpful in those people. If people have gurus or teachers or mentors, whichever way they want to label it, people they listen to, do you trust it? Because you don't ever know that person fully. You don't ever know anybody fully. Barely. We spend our lives, if we want, choosing to discover ourselves fully. So we can't ever know anybody else fully, even your partner. You never do. You just know the main characteristics, and generally you get the good overview for if this is a good-hearted person or a bad-hearted person. Simple as, really. So yeah, to know those people that you trust and go with them and listen to their advice. And then you look at things like, we were talking about scriptures and thousands of years of yogic experience and science. So it is proven again and again, but through your own experience. If you don't believe it and you want to know, go do it. Go do it yourself. Don't criticize. Don't be like, no, it doesn't work, or that isn't a real part of life. Go find out and live it without an agenda, which is the hardest thing for people to do because they want to disprove it. The thing is, if it's strong enough, you can. If you were to do a silent meditation retreat, emotions are going to come up. You can't ignore it. If you were to take 5 grams of psilocybin mushrooms, you're going somewhere and you're going to experience something. You can't deny it. It's like these things, there are ways to ensure that you'll get an experience. If you were to hold a plank for 30 minutes, if you can, like your abs are going to be ripped. You're going to get a result that cannot be denied, right? Yeah. And it's to find that in the spiritual sense, which is what seeking is, But when science comes into it, Robert Anton Williams has a really good talk about reality tunnels, and he talks about how religion has skewed everything. As you said, the perversion of spirituality really started with religion, in sense, maybe with Catholicism and Christianity.
Yeah, Abrahamic religions.
Yeah, through them. So that is where they're shaping a sort of culture and how people think and feel. And scientists, they'll do the same. We all know about like the documentaries on eating meat or just eating vegetables, and how those people choose the doctors who are in line with that. Corruption, judges pay that judge off or whatever, as an example. He's filtering that through to, well, this is the truth, and that person gets off from jail when it's coming from a corrupt background. And I'm not saying anything's corrupt or not in how we view our lives or from the scientific perspective, but that scientist has a reality tunnel. He wants to get a result, and it's coming from his background, so you have to remove all biases. Terence McKenna spoke really well about that kind of stuff as well. Is, you know, it's your life, it's your experience. He has a great talk on it's your laughter, it's your orgasms, it's your fun, it's your breath, it's your life. Don't waste your time wondering about what Michael Jackson's doing or what Bill Clinton's doing. They're the examples he uses in the talk, because that is all stuff that's pulling you away from your experience. Don't worry about someone else. Go find your path that has meaning and follow that. Follow the people within that will help you. Not follow, get guidance, because you're the own authority. It's down to you to do it. And that's if you really want the truth. You don't want to be led, you want to know. And you'll find it will come across. While science goes, we're just going to dig in this little hole and we're going to zoom in with a microscope which will only show one thing. Or you look at the telescope and you see so much. You need the middle ground. You know, we need to know what we're looking for and the right tools to look for it.
Yeah, so the key point there is experience. And it always goes back to that. You know, with all systems, when the systems fail, the only thing you can rely on is your own experience. And this is where the yoga sciences are separate from. And I've stood the test of time because it's always been about experiential experiences and what you've gone through. So whenever you feel, and this is probably why we trust certain figures, it's because we've experienced a level of something that they're talking about, and then it's so easy. Well, I guess that's with anything. As soon as you listen to someone that you trust, some prominent figure you trust, or an author that you read about and you trust them, the trust is only created because whatever experience they are talking about, you've either experienced a good portion of it or you've experienced a tiny bit of it. And then you know, okay, if they've experienced that, then surely the other stuff they're talking about, they might be slightly further ahead of me, means that it's something I should probably pay attention to. And this is where the birth or the creation of the teacher or the guru comes in. It's because they are there to guide you on a process that you've probably dipped your toes in. So I think this is where today, I guess, going back to the meditation topic, this is where it all stems from, or this is where it all starts from. It's, if someone says to you, I don't believe in meditation, I don't believe in spirituality, or this, that's fine. You don't believe in that. That's cool. But then, you know, you can't deny that other people are experiencing this. The only thing you can really relate it to is your own experiences. Go and experience it. Go on a retreat, do some breath work, etc., and then make the conclusion or reevaluate your idea or your interpretation on the actual experience. And that's the only thing we have, because everything else apart from your experience is on the outside. So my experience is outside of you. You know, so whatever that you go through in life, the only way you're going to get the answer is go and experience it for yourself. For example, greater or more sort of abstract things we are all experiencing. So gravity, we know gravity exists because you're experiencing it right now and I'm experiencing it. If it wasn't there, you'd be floating in the air, you know. And how is it feeling for you? And something I want to tie into what we're talking about, you can use those forms of meditation and spirituality for a darker purpose. And this is something that Sadhguru is not keen on talking about when it comes to open discussions. But if you look at his books, he will probably go into more detail or shine a brighter light on these little things. So he talks about using the process of meditation, using the process of breathwork and stuff. So something that you mentioned with the Joe Rogan podcast that you listen to, it's quite easy to use that form of meditation. And this is probably why, the Tibetan monks were reluctant to give their secrets away, because that can be used for a darker purpose. So for us, we ask the question, what is this dark purpose beyond just the materialistic stuff? Oh, I'm going to make a bit more money, I'm going to be famous and I'll get a bunch of attention. Maybe that's a dark level that most people are thinking about, the darkest it gets. But there are levels beyond that, which you can use these forms of, deeper levels of consciousness to have a darker agenda. So you can start manipulating people. You can start using the arts. This is where the black arts come into, where you can start using the parts of the realms and the different sort of aspects of the realms to use for your own personal agenda, so a sick agenda as well. So there's that aspect, and this is one of the reasons why these monks are very reluctant to give their secrets away. I remember there was a guy, when you were talking about the monks, there's a documentary on BBC many, many years ago. I think it was in 1973, from what I remember.
This was the past life one when you watched it?
No. No, this is the one where a guy called Dynamo Jack, I don't know if you ever heard of him. He was nicknamed Dynamo Jack. He was a Chinese man or a Japanese man. And this BBC filmmaker went over to the East to learn with him, and he manipulated this man. he wanted to learn his secrets because this man was reluctant to give his secrets away to the Western world and to like mainstream, because he knew that he would get the media attention on him and he didn't want to go through any of that. So he was very reluctant in the first place to give his secrets away and to even demonstrate his abilities because he was so scared. And so this man, for many years, I think it was a 7-8 year process, he befriended this man, he built a trust with this guy, and then he said to him, I want to do this documentary. This man, who was nicknamed Dynamo Jack, at the start said no straight away, but then through developing a good trust with this person from the BBC, he started doing these things. So he said, okay, I'll let you record me, but he said only in one condition, that you don't use this to go back to the BBC and show it to the mainstream. And that's exactly what he did. So he was displaying his medical feats, what he could do. So he would have people come to him to correct certain problems that they had in their body. So he had this amazing ability to create heat from his palms or throughout his body.
He would set paper on fire.
Yes. So you've seen the video.
Incredible.
Yeah, and he had all these people doing so many tests on him that were part of this documentary. And he originally thought, like I said, it was only just an exclusive thing, and that was the end of it. Just for curiosity for this person that was making the documentary. But yeah, he shows you, there's that one video of him igniting that newspaper ball. So he scrunches it up and he burns it. And he's saying he's using the flow of chi to ignite the object. And again, this is the using the power. But then it wasn't him that used it for the bad reason. It was the filmmaker that decided that we're going to show this to the rest of the world. And he broke this man's trust. So when they did that, this man was never seen again. So the ashram, or the place that he was working from, it disappeared and he was never seen again. So this documentarian was searching for him, and then the latter part of his life was just looking for this guy again. And he never found him again. So this Dynamo Jack said that as soon as my name is tarnished and it's been put out there in the mainstream and in the spotlight, you'll never see me again. So, and he disappeared. And I think locals were saying that he disappeared into the mountains and stuff. But yeah, so this is where this man was using this for a good purpose, but then it was by the mainstream people that didn't fully understand what was going on. They used it for more of a, to get more views and more sort of, the sort of material gains aspect. And this is one of the reasons why, I hear so many stories, and I've always heard stories as I've grown up, monks that are 200 years old, 250 years old. How do you prove that? Well, they have nothing to prove to anyone. They sit on the mountains and they let life continue the way it is. If life wants to destroy itself, life will destroy itself, but they'll just sit in the mountains and they'll just let time and different eras go by. So there are monks, and there's stories of monks who are 250 years old, 300 years old, and if you go over to them, they look no older than about 60 or 70, and you just think, this guy surely can't be that age. But when you go and meet them, they have no reason to kind of prove to you that they're at this age. Whether you believe it or not is down to you. So that's the other aspect of how, when you're in those realms, when you discover different aspects of spirituality and different aspects of this practice, you have this non-attachment to the world, and you feel as though you don't owe the world anything. It's just you in your element, serving in the best way possible and not giving your secrets out for any reason. And Wim Hof was a very rare person, because those secrets that he was talking about, like he said, none of the stuff that he's discovered is his stuff. It's traditions that have been going on for at least 5,000 years, written, and then before that, spoken. So, and he says, I think he's only glimpsed like 4% or 2% of what he's gone through. So there's a massive channel of other aspects that he hasn't even touched. And he was one of those main guys that came to the mainstream and said, this is what's going on. This is something that you guys still can't explain. Science still can't fully explain what's going on in his body. They can say, yeah, this is what we think is happening, but in terms of his own experience and from what he's going through, science can't explain it apart from believe what he's saying. So there's that aspect of it as well.
Yeah, I remember doing my first Kriya it was with Sadhguru's Isha Foundation. I can't remember when it go. Good few years back, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and it was the first time I'd ever done an actual Kriya. So you sit and you do the movements and breath work, and we build it up over 4 days, and then at the end they sort of give you the final aspect of it. And it was a tape played by Sadhguru, which was like a live transmission, and doing the breath locks and the holds, and I just shot off somewhere, and I was like, what was that? Like, that was probably one of the most spectacular experiences for a first occurrence, like the meditation, but much more sensational and awareness and visual, and I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe what was going on. And it's things like that, and this is only basic, and it's being taught to the public. I mean, you pay for the course, it's a few £100, but you pay for it, and it goes to continue feeding, the teachings. But they give out the basic levels of things for you to not do any harm with, or not use any corruption with, because how the human race, again, it's the Kali Yuga, it's the Dark Ages. People, there's so much freedom of information out there. There's so much fake information out there. There's so much bad in the world, so much good in the world, all going on in like a massive jungle. It's more the Dark Ages at the minute. And you can really supposed to see that by the state of the world. So can you trust people with such powerful practices? And if the layman, the average person is asleep and going, it's a load of rubbish, maybe it's for the better, and it's the people who hopefully have pure intentions will pursue those practices, or they just want to know, or maybe on that path you purify anyway and go, I understand the value and the power of this. And even on my own journey, I still have those moments, go, wait, should I be saying this, or should I be offering that out? Or not that I know any of these deep secrets, definitely not, but it's with breath work, and it's powerful. What would that person be using that breath work for? What do we do with that energy? Do they just go and waste the energy? Do they not do anything with it? Does it add to already a destructive or a depressed mind? There's so many elements that come into it, which you have to look at yourself and be honest with yourself, and what do I use it for? And same with the fame and stuff that we've spoke about before. Also for people is, Instagram and social media, and the pitfalls of that, trying to share something that's quite genuine and comes from the heart. You can so easily get distorted on there, and your topics start to change, or you start to go for the masses, and the trends that all come about that everybody does that serve what, I don't know, other than the trends or popularity or fame. And we disguise it a lot with self-acceptance, or everyone's free to do what they want, which they are if they want, but what do you want to do it for? Why do you want to do it? What is your pure intention? What is the truth? And how easy it is to mask ourselves from that actual reality. This is, again, we spend a lifetime learning to know ourselves, so how can we expect to know other people?
Yeah, and there are examples of people who are using it for the wrong reason. And obviously, like we said, fame and fortune are just a minor thing. It's something that everyone gets addicted to, but there are other heinous acts. So, for example, Hitler was obsessed with Hinduism. That's one of the reasons why
the swastika reversed.
100%. He read the Bhagavad Gita, and there's many accounts, and people say that he interpreted the Bhagavad Gita in a very dark, sadistic way, and he's thought of being a superior person. And the word Aryan is a Sanskrit word for a race of primitive Indians. So the people that came into India. So we had the Dravidians, that were the South Indians that lived in India. And they were native to India, and then we had the Aryan race that came over. And again, I'm a product of the merger of these two cultures. But again, Hitler was fascinated by this idea of this superior race, and that's why he called his race of people the Aryans. So it just shows you that you can use this for the wrong reasons, and it can be just more than just fame and fortune. It goes to actually killing millions of people. Same as Oppenheimer. And he's the one who created the atomic bomb. The nuclear bomb. He quoted the quote from the Bhagavad Gita when Krishna showed Arjun his true form, and I think he says the quote, "I am now death," when he's in his full manifestation and he's in his divine form, his cosmic form. Krishna talks about his life, plus he's also the sort of epitome or the incarnation of death as well. So he's both. And this is something that Oppenheimer quoted when he realized that actually, what the hell have I just done? I've created this thing that will kill millions of people, and that's because of my invention, my sort of, my idea of striving for something that's quite dark. So there's that aspect of it as well. And we have to really appreciate that aspect as well. We have to understand that there is this aspect that exists, and it's how you want to use it. And this is one of the reasons why most of the teachings that we have today that come out, they come out, God knows, hundreds of years or thousands of years afterwards, and then we start to understand, actually the earth wasn't flat, when people from the past have been saying it for thousands of years that the earth's not flat. And at what consequence is learning that the earth's not flat going to affect the population of people? Well, we create space travel, and eventually we want to end up conquering other planets, don't we? Exactly how we've done to this planet. We want to go out there and conquer other planets for resources. So it's what form or what interpretation are you going to use these forms of deeper realms or deeper teachings for? And yeah, it's deeply fascinating. And yeah, so this is one of the reasons why when we do introduce people to meditation, maybe it's a good thing that they only focus on the sort of the baby steps or the sort of the early stages of meditation, as opposed to going deep straight into it, because it'll be just too much for them to take. And you probably experienced that through breathwork, from the reaction that certain people have. If they go too hardcore into it, they have some crazy ass reactions. People slipping into different states of consciousness, people going insane, just tearing themselves up. You have all those reactions because maybe this was too early for them to glimpse that. And maybe it's just a form of trauma that needs to come out.
Well, exactly. We can never know, and you can never say, if something bad's happened to somebody, it's their karma, and it's like, we don't know that, we're just assuming. But how do we ever know anything about somebody else's state or what the experience they're going through is? Which can only be analysed in retrospect later on when that person has grown and been able to see these aspects. I think the more knowing you have, like I've had some pretty intense experiences with the breathwork of releasing trauma, generally a lot of anger. It was something I bottled up. So when it was coming out, my body was like thrashing around and shouting, a retreat. It wasn't scary at any point. I was literally internally watching, okay, my body's shouting, it's moving, and it was just getting all of this energy, and I could feel it leaving. And to somebody else, it might be like, this guy's having a fit, So it's your own awareness and experience of the topic or the subject or the thing you're looking for. It plays a massive part of your understanding of going through it, and that's again why we have the guides or the leaders or the teachers or the gurus, not in a state of a superior being and somebody to worship maybe, but somebody to go, this is the way. If you want to learn yoga, I'm going to go to a yoga class. If I want to stretch, I'll come to you. If I want to breathe, come to me. Whatever it is those people who've gone down that path, that's their thing, that's their opening. Go learn from it, so find out what the interest is, and hopefully you're being taught by somebody with pure intention as well, who isn't doing it for nefarious reasons.
Yeah, and tying that in with what I was saying before the podcast started, there are certain scriptures that you can turn to, and they will guide you. So you might not feel confident in people, in trusting people, because obviously you generally think that most people have their own agenda or their own goal. And sometimes the agenda is not necessarily a negative thing, it's a positive agenda. But if you want to stay away from these sort of agendas, then turn to ancient scriptures or ancient teachings that people were using to help them out. And then to a certain degree you can argue that maybe those are written for the interpretation of certain outcomes, but then again it goes back to exactly what we were talking about before. Experience it. Go through it, go to a teacher. If you realise that actually I don't like the way this teacher teaches, or I don't like what I'm learning, just go to another teacher. It's quite simple. But I think we get too addicted to, well, I've invested this much time or this much money towards this course or this sort of practice, so I just don't want to stop doing that and jump to another practice. But sometimes maybe that is the way to do it.
I think it's checking in it with your resistance. Like, do I not like this teacher because it's hard in my psychology, or the practice is difficult? Or do I just not gel with the person? And then, once you've analysed it balancedly, then go and find someone else, because there's always so many teachers out there to learn from whatever aspect you want to learn. That's another point of the state of the world is, whatever you want to know, it's out there now.
Yeah.
The internet's there. You'll find people around. A lot of people are doing their own business of what they want to do now, rather than you've just got to go to the factory or the shop or whatever. It's so many independent lines of work, and passion and hobbies are people's businesses, so there's somebody there to teach.
Yeah. And the final thing, I think we pretty much hit our target. One little thing, I think it kind of goes onto one side of the conversation, but it still has some sort of roots in the conversation. I was watching this video before this podcast about this torture sort of experiment that they used to do. They basically used to use a white room and put people in a white room to kind of torture the person. And I was just thinking to myself, could I be in a room which is completely white or completely dark, and be able to hold my ground in that environment. And it's quite interesting how certain people in certain environments react in a certain way. So I think they've got that other experiment where they drip water on you, and that can be quite torturous as well. But it's interesting how certain minds, depending on the conditioning, depending on where you are in life, will have a certain outcome. So certain sort of activities should not be undertaken by certain people. So I think this ties in with that aspect of meditation as well. So there are certain levels of meditation that maybe are just not the right form of meditation for you. So it's the sort of stereotypical form of meditation is you sitting there and you just chanting home or with your, sitting cross-legged, etc. But there are other forms of meditation that people can engage in. So the Sufi form of meditation, which is more active and dancing and stuff, there's that form of meditation, there's the breath work, and there's so many different forms of meditation that you can just go into, and that's all it is. It's just you doing something that almost stops you from continuously being stuck in your head. Any practice, even doing handstands for me to a certain degree was a form of meditation. So any practice that takes you out of the element of continuously chattering to yourself is a form of meditation. So
Well, you find that with your art, don't you? If you're doing your handstands or I'm swinging my bow staff around, I'm not thinking. Your meditation's associated with your art, with something that you love to do and to be there because you're in that form of stillness. It's to maybe observe that flow in motion and then go, that's the feeling that maybe I'm looking for in meditation. So you can start to search for it. It's just very difficult because we love the stimulus of the thoughts and the juiciness of, I am going to do this, or the fantasy, or the past memory, or beating ourselves up for a past, whatever. We like to stay active in that way. Just choose not to stay active. Takes time and effort, but build yourself slowly to go that way through the meditation, and more just unfolds, like more clarity unfolds, and it's just such a wonderful way to live. And the most powerful practice I've ever come across is that simplicity of meditation.
Right. I think that's a great place to wrap up. Any more words, or is that pretty much it?
No, man. Maybe we'll throw some information about the meditation we're going to do.
Yeah.
How long are we doing it for?
Yeah, so Craig and I are doing this, I don't want to call it a challenge, but it's quite enticing for both of us to do. I think what we were saying originally was to do like a 2-hour meditation and record it and see the experiences that we go through, and we can talk about the experience straight after our practice. But we'll do that. We'll probably shoot it in Studio 2 with a white background. I think that's quite nice. We just want to know, because I've never done a 2-hour meditation before. I don't know what's the longest that you've meditated for?
I want to say about 140.
Okay, so you've gone up to that.
Yeah, I don't think I've done 2 hours. Because there's retreats, and I did the silent retreat, like the whole day.
Yeah.
He's silent. It wasn't specifically sat there in meditation, so the thoughts and the emotion would come in, but the whole time, it was grasping towards that way, but there would be at least hour sessions, hour-and-a-half sessions. So it's been towards there. I don't think I've breached 2 hours though. Yeah,
so we'll start off with that then. We'll do a 2-hour one, and then I think we'll bump it up to 3 hours. I think that's where things start becoming really interesting from what I've read. Once you get past that 3-hour mark, especially when you're in a particular pose, and I think Sadhguru says if you can stay in one pose for 3 hours, it's a good form of good achievement to have. Like if you're still for 3 hours, imagine the kind of stuff that you'll go through. And I was still for half an hour, and I couldn't feel my body the other day. So that'll be quite interesting to do that, and then hopefully we can build it up to 6 hours, and then 12 hours, and maybe even 24 hours meditation will be a really interesting one to do. And it'll be interesting to see what we learn from that. But it'll all be on video, hopefully. Yeah. So if you guys want to sit down and watch a video for 24 hours, I don't think we'll have the storage space. I don't think we'll have the storage space in our phones, but maybe we'll have to do it as a live stream. So maybe that's a good way of doing it. Yeah. So we're going to start doing that next week. We'll shoot the first one.
We'll go for next week. I need to get my legs in order, man. After that training today, it's like, to sit there is really still, so I'm going to be on them. Just another point on meditation I actually wanted to go over is that if people watch the video of us meditating, or they go to classes and see other meditating, don't think that person is deep in meditation, because you, as we were saying before, you don't know somebody. You also don't know what's going on in their heads. I mean, you could look at that person, you might be looking serene in the posture, doesn't mean it's quiet in the head. So you can't compare and you can't compete, just always stay with, let go, I'm looking out again, or this is going on. It's like, times where, you know, I'll be doing a class and I might have had a very stressful day and it's difficult to get that meditation posture. It's not like, it might look like it's going incredibly well, but inside it's like, just relax, you have to keep coming down. So each meditation can vary. You just get more familiar with the events and the areas and also understanding yourself. So yeah, just never compare your meditation to the class, to the video, to what other people are doing. Yeah. Maybe the Buddha was like singing Barbie Girl in his head, you know, when he sat there meditating, who knows, right?
You see, that's the thing. It's quite easy to look at someone and think, that person's meditating, but again, what base are you coming from? Just because he looks tranquil doesn't mean that he's meditating. Like you said, he might be going through 100 things in his head. So again, it'll be quite interesting to see what kind of experience we have in this little challenge.
Choosing that authenticity and then going that, I'm doing it because I want to discover, I want to find out.
Yeah.
And it's kind of what I try and bring in with every session.
Yeah, perfect. Right guys, this was podcast number 21. And again, this will be on Instagram as a preview. It will be on YouTube as a video, and you can listen to us on Spotify as well. Thank you so much for listening, and we shall see you in the next one.